The shocking truth about real Viking life that Hollywood never shows you. The real truth about Viking daily life, beyond Hollywood myths. Everyone thinks they know Vikings from movies and TV shows, but the reality of Viking life was completely different from what Hollywood shows us. Picture this. A typical Viking warrior wasn't spending all day conquering lands. Instead, he was working his farm from sunrise to sunset, while his wife managed everything inside their home. When night fell, the entire family crowded into a single room, sharing their space with goats and other livestock. This wasn't the glamorous Viking lifestyle most people imagine. The dark side of Viking civilization. Viking society had an incredibly brutal foundation built on slavery and human sacrifice. These fierce warriors didn't just raid for gold and treasures. They captured prisoners during their expeditions across Europe from Spain all the way to the Byzantine Empire, then brought them back to Scandinavia to sell as thralls, which was their word for slaves. Archaeological discoveries have uncovered iron slave collars throughout the region, and evidence points to large-scale forced labor operations in Sweden. The horror didn't stop there. Vikings regularly practiced human sacrifice, with mass burial sites across Scandinavia, confirming the terrifying accounts written by Christian witnesses who documented these ritualistic killings performed to honor their gods. Viking funeral rituals, death in flames. The legendary Viking ship funeral wasn't just a myth created for entertainment. When a respected warrior died, their body would be placed aboard a vessel that could range from a small rowing boat to an enormous warship. The deceased would be surrounded by grave goods, precious items they'd supposedly need in the afterlife, including jewelry, weapons, animals, and most shockingly, living slaves who belonged to the dead person. The entire ship would then be set ablaze while still on land, creating a spectacular burning ceremony. Both men and women could receive this honor, though men were more commonly given ship burials. Ahmad ibn Fadlan, a 10th century writer, witnessed one of these ceremonies firsthand. He documented that wealthy Vikings would divide their possessions 3 ways. 1/3 went to their family as inheritance, another third paid for elaborate funeral clothing, and the final third purchased alcoholic beverages that would be consumed during the cremation celebration. Winter survival, Ice Age transportation. Scandinavia's harsh winters created frozen landscapes that made normal travel nearly impossible. But Vikings were incredibly resourceful when it came to winter transportation. Instead of letting ice and snow stop them from hunting and traveling, they developed ingenious solutions. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings used wooden skis, with over 100 pinewood skis discovered preserved in ancient bogs. They also created ice skates carved from horse and moose bones, allowing them to glide across frozen rivers and lakes. High-ranking Viking women were even buried with wooden sleighs, showing how important winter transportation was to their culture. The original reverse mullet. Vikings had some seriously questionable fashion choices, especially when it came to their hair. When Vikings first arrived in England, local people were shocked by their unusual hairstyle. Short hair in the front with long hair flowing down the back. This reverse mullet became so associated with Viking culture that it was later adopted by Norman invaders, who were actually descendants of Vikings. The Christian Church particularly despised this hairstyle, considering it both barbaric and inappropriate. Living arrangements, 1 room for everyone. Most Viking families lived in incredibly cramped conditions. A typical Viking house consisted of just 1 large room where the entire family ate, slept, and lived alongside their farm animals. Only wealthy Vikings could afford houses with separate rooms, which kept the goats from trampling people during the night. As Viking society became more prosperous, richer families built larger homes with multiple rooms and spaces. The main room in these expanded houses was called the longhouse, featuring a central hearth for cooking and warmth, plus enough space to shelter people, livestock, and food supplies during harsh winters. Women's rights and responsibilities in Viking society. Viking women held more power than most people realize, though their lives were far from easy. While Viking men worked the farms, women controlled household operations, managing food supplies, weaving cloth, repairing sails, and essentially running the family business. Women faced severe consequences for adultery, with some regions allowing husbands to legally kill both their unfaithful wife and her lover. However, men could freely keep mistresses and father children outside marriage, leading some Christian observers to mistakenly believe Vikings practiced polygamy. Despite these harsh double standards, Viking women enjoyed certain rights that were revolutionary for their time. They could divorce their husbands through a surprisingly simple legal process that only required gathering witnesses and declaring themselves divorced. Property disputes could complicate matters, but the mere existence of divorce rights for women was remarkable in medieval society. Entertainment and games, Viking leisure time. Vikings weren't all work and warfare. They enjoyed sophisticated entertainment, particularly a strategic board game called Nefetafel, which was similar to chess but with unique Viking twists. This dramatic strategy game evolved from earlier Roman games and became so culturally important that it frequently appeared in Norse sagas, with legendary heroes and kings shown playing matches. Vikings also played regular chess, as evidenced by the famous Lewis chessmen, a 12th century Norwegian chess set carved from walrus ivory and whale teeth that's now displayed in the British Museum. Viking literacy, the runic alphabet. Contrary to popular belief, Vikings weren't illiterate barbarians. They had their own writing system called futhark, a runic alphabet consisting of 24 characters that could express several Germanic languages. Both Viking men and women could read and write using these runes, which archaeologists have discovered carved into stones throughout northern Europe. Many experts believe these stone carvings served mystical or religious purposes beyond simple communication. Storytelling culture, the Skalds. Vikings had professional storytellers called skalds, who served a similar function to ancient Greek poets. These skilled entertainers memorized epic tales and recited them around fires or in great halls, educating younger generations about Viking culture, religion, and history. Skalds were especially prominent in royal courts, where they created elaborate stories that placed current rulers within legendary genealogies, essentially providing royal propaganda through entertainment. Between 812 and 1200 AD, historical records preserve the names of over 300 skalds. Their poems featured complex literary devices called kennings, which were poetic phrases that created vivid imagery without repetition. Instead of simply saying death, a skald might refer to the sleep of the sword. A 13th century Icelandic scholar named Snorri Sturluson wrote an entire textbook explaining these kennings, and in the process, he recorded many Norse myths that would have otherwise been lost to history. Viking diet. Eating better than English peasants, Vikings enjoyed remarkably diverse and protein-rich diets that surpassed what most medieval Europeans ate. Even the poorest Viking ate better than the average English peasant during the same period. Viking families typically ate 2 meals daily, one upon waking and another after completing their work. Meat formed the foundation of their diet, including goat, reindeer, elk, lamb, beef, mutton, horse, and occasionally bear when skilled hunters could bring one down. Pigs were commonly raised on farms, making pork particularly popular. Most Viking meat dishes were boiled rather than roasted. One popular dish called scouse was a hearty stew served with bread made from beans, grain, and even tree bark during difficult times. As seafaring people, Vikings consumed massive amounts of fish, especially herring, which they prepared pickled, dried, salted, or smoked for long-term storage. Viking meals weren't purely carnivorous. They ate plenty of fruits and vegetables, including carrots, beans, cabbage, and apples. They enhanced their food with various herbs and spices like cumin, mustard, coriander, and horseradish, proving they cared about flavor as much as nutrition. Health problems, the dark side of Viking diet. Despite their healthy diet, Vikings faced serious health challenges. Archaeological excavations of Viking sewers and waste pits reveal that intestinal parasites were common problems. Even worse, Viking bread was often contaminated with seeds from poisonous weeds that accidentally got mixed in during the baking process, causing additional health complications. Mead, the Vikings' favorite drink. While modern people love beer, Vikings preferred mead, an alcoholic beverage made by fermenting water, honey, and yeast. Mead played a central role in Viking feasts and was believed to inspire great poetry and creativity. This drink was so culturally significant that Norse mythology features a magical goat named Heidrun, who produces mead instead of milk, showing how important this beverage was to Viking civilization. Epic Viking feasts, more than just food. Viking feasts were elaborate social events that went far beyond simple meals. These massive celebrations took place in longhouses and were hosted by important figures like local chiefs or kings. Feasts commemorated various occasions including harvest festivals, religious ceremonies, weddings, births, and successful raids. While the abundant food was impressive, the real purpose was strengthening social bonds, reinforcing political relationships, and forming crucial alliances that held Viking society together. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to discover more shocking truths about ancient civilizations that Hollywood got completely wrong.